Okay, I still get very anxious before recording videos. Gotta get used to this. I really have to. I don't know how people do it, honestly. It's really stressful to record videos. I used to do it when I was a kid, but gotta get that muscle going, I don't know. I guess so. Is that how it works? It's eventually you just start to get better by time. Well, currently I'm working on a manga series. I haven't worked on a manga in almost a year now. I have to go, if you don't know this, you go from the plain solid core of you for your idea of your story. What do you want to tell the audience? For example, I want to highlight the idea of inequality. For example, you can take that subject and it could be the core of your story. And by that, when you have the core of the story, like for example, this character starts here and ends up here, and then eventually you kind of turn it to a script. You kind of have to write a script. Of course, you can develop it into a more script ideas. Who are the characters, what is going on, what is the name of the world, what happens, yada yada yada. And then that script, you can turn it, you can extract from it your characters, your world, if you have a world, if it's a different world than the usual world. After you do that, after you have your characters, you have your world building, everything, you kind of eventually you just start working on a full-on kind of a more detailed script. And once you have your scripts written, you can start maybe thinking about doing storyboards. So I see a lot of people like jump straight to storyboards. Storyboards are kind of like the end part of making a movie or slash making comics. Because I do believe, honestly, that making comics and making movies are kind of related to each other. Because they have almost the same steps to making a movie and making a comics. Like, you have to write your story, then you have to do your storyboards, your characters and everything, and then you start filming the movie slash doing your comic. They're pretty late. So I think a comic book artist can kind of be a director in a way, Gotta think about it. Come on, gotta believe in me, and you just have to think about it. And in terms of what I'm working on, currently I'm kind of struggling with the first page. Like the first page is very important because the first page you have to hook the reader. That's why I usually have like comics starting with I don't know, some blatant, obnoxious, maybe vulgar way of writing, I would say. Like starting your first page, it gotta be something very catchy, People gonna be like, oh, what's going on here? Well, why would that be happening? When I was reading, I was checking out JoJo, yes. And JoJo, they have quite an interesting way of starting his manga. Like, the way he starts his manga is this two characters. We see a character who's underground. He's just randomly, my camera just cut for some reason. Anyways, as I was saying, it's very interesting. Like, we have this question that we're starting with, which is, what are these two characters doing? What is going on? And of course, those things create questions. Trying to understand what is going on. I'm repeating my words constantly because I keep hearing my goddamn voice on the computer, so I have to lower it down. Anyways, and this is what you kind of want to have in your first story, for example. And we can look for another example, maybe Vagabond. Crap. As you can see, the way he starts his story is quite interesting. We see a character, he's gasping for air. Why would he be gasping for air? We see this bloody with all these soldiers dead and warriors dead. We see our main characters sitting there, and it makes you want to understand what is going on. Eventually, the author has to respond to those questions. And when it comes to me, when I try to put those things into practice, it kind of gets a little messy, I can show you guys what I made like 2 years ago. I made a comic called Moroccan Babes. This is my this is the only comic that I made ever. Of course, I made it once before, but this one is like, I poured my heart and soul into it. Like, making manga is kind of like a voluntary enslavement, You pour yourself into this thing that it's not gonna, like, there is a high chance that it's not guaranteed success, it's not guaranteed success, but yet you still do it anyways. And eventually it could work, eventually it could not work. I got 4th place, which is not bad, but I think it's in this website, like a Manga Creator Plus. You kind of have this monthly placement, kind of a competition which is monthly, and eventually you can get the attention of an editor or something. This was my comic. I made this in 2022, I think, or 2023. 2023, yes. Today I was in Marrakesh. I worked on this for a month, and I gotta say, it was a very mentally taxing month. No joke, it was rough. Like, I really struggled. Like, I did not do anything other than making this manga. Like, it was that bad. Like, I had to literally lock myself in a room and just wake up, eat breakfast, do manga, go to bed, wake up, repeat. You know, it's a constant work, constant work. I gotta say, it was a lot of struggle. It was a very, very tough month. A lot of people did not understand why I did that, you know, but I'm the only one who understands. People can find things that they can lose themselves into, and I had the privilege to find in making comics, which is something that of course I would not let it go, because people say things, you know. And yeah, enough yapping, I guess. But the story kind of talks about like this Moroccan gangsters, and it kind of follows the same route as Pulp Fiction, because I was very inspired by Pulp Fiction, and I love that movie so much. Basically, how it works, I mean, these two gangsters and their boss, kind of tells them to kind of collect this sort of money, and eventually they go collect this money. But some things at the same time happen, which makes things very, very complicated in Morocco. This leader that they have in this country, they insult the business owner's daughter. So he orders his two best assassins or workers to go and do this naughty work for him, you know, to kind of get this revenge going on. And it gets very hectic, very messy, and I kind of like that part of the story. But the thing is, I learned so much while working on this. It really opened my eyes. It was totally like a very good experience. Like this second experience, of course, the second experience that made me fall in love with making comics. But the first experience, I made another comic, which was like, it was a one shot as well, same as this one. I made it for the competition, and it called Hollow. It's really bad. I made it like a year before that I made Moroccan Babes. A lot of improvement. You can see the very awkward looking face. There is an artist and there is a comic book artist. These two are very separate. I think they're super separate. Like, you can be a very good illustrator or in general illustrator, yeah, and you cannot transition into being a very good comic book illustrator, you know, because comic book illustration is very, very its own thing, you know. It's kind of its own sphere, we can kind of say this. And making illustrations is also its own sphere, of course. But I think a comic book artist can definitely do illustration as well as the illustrator, or in a different way. It's very inspired by comics, of course. I know it gets very messy, but bear with me. Just bear with me. There is like these two differences from drawing comics and just drawing in general. It's quite different, I would say. There is a lot of difference between them. And do these kind of practice drills, I eventually found myself like kind of not able to draw when I'm drawing comics. Like, I can draw pretty well, pretty decently. Like, I have some drawings here. Like, for example, I can draw pretty decently. Like, I'm not that bad. But the only issue that I have is that when I try to transition from doing like art, my usual art, and transition it into making comics, it is very difficult for me. I cannot transition my art into comics. So my art can get a bit awkward and weird and kind of different. You can see this instant, you can see it on my Instagram as well. You can kind of see, as I was saying, you can kind of see this thing as in my artwork, in like random artwork on my Instagram. Like, I can do decent illustrations. I can definitely do illustrations pretty well. Yes, they are quite comic-like, but when I kind of try to transition this style into making like my manga, it kind of, I don't know, it gets very awkward. It changes a bit. It kind of shifts itself into this weird style that it's it's not as usual as the stuff that I make, of course. It's a very frustrating thing. It's like, it gets you very frustrated. Here you can see another instance where my style kind of changes a bit. It's still decent, it's not bad. I wouldn't call it terrible art, but it definitely changes. Like, I think the main like solution for this, it's for me to draw more comics. I think this is the main like solution. If I draw more comics, that means I will improve in drawing comics. And if I keep practicing my illustrative work, it's kind of its own thing, you know. So that's what I'm gonna try and do. Anyways, it was just a video of yapping about my illustrative artwork, and I guess that's what's up, you know. And like and subscribe to the video, and share, of course. Follow your boy. Take care of yourself, my friend.